glad you could join me again today. I'd like to begin today by recommending a book by a man named Dr. Chuck Lynch. I met him one time in Kansas City. The book is called You Can Work It Out. And in his book, he talks about the power of personal responsibility in restoring relationships. And his premise is about taking responsibility for what is our own and then drawing boundaries to help define the limits of that responsibility, setting healthy boundaries so you don't drown, drown with all the pressures and the expectations that come to your life. Struggle, and conflict are a part of life, but they can leave us feeling helpless and hopeless and powerless. But we can learn to draw healthy boundaries and deal correctly with the situations. And that way we can reduce our stress, we can increase our personal peace, we can resolve relationship problems, and we can actually live in more freedom. Do you know what a Venn diagram is? It's a bunch of overlapping circles. What you do for a job, your family, your church, your hobbies, all these different things are in a circle and they overlap onto you. And this reality can sometimes create blurred lines and blurred relationships and make it really difficult for us to find clear boundaries. Well, as we strive to meet the expectations and demands of others that are attached to our lives, we sometimes grow exhausted. Christine Hoover mentions some types of exhaustion that come from this overlap, and we want to consider them and talk just a little bit about boundaries. One type of exhaustion that she mentions is emotional exhaustion. Sometimes the burden of carrying the needs of everyone else can just grow too heavy. Sometimes we care too much, and sometimes we know too much about the other people whose circles overlap ours. She says we may experience empathy fatigue and grow weary of being the counselor who listens rather than the friend who enjoys connection. That happens, doesn't it? Well, to draw a boundary around our mental well-being is vital. We cannot solve everybody else's problems, and we're not meant to either. We can be a listening ear, but even then, a boundary is necessary to allow us to process and to pray over what we've heard. A constant barrage of fear and worry is never healthy. So an emotional boundary might look something like this. It might mean that you set a time limit or you make a specific space and time when you listen and you help. It might mean that you refuse to allow your mind to dwell on what you've heard. Instead, you listen to good music, or you pray, or you take a walk and give yourself time to heal and to pray for understanding and to give that burden, that problem, that emotional baggage to the Lord. It might mean that you learn to journal. That's how I do it. I write down the information so I can come back later, and that gives me a better time to pray over it, to understand and to think through the emotions that are taking place. Another secret is to not allow your emotions to have free rein. Count to 10 before you respond. Judge and measure your words and say nothing that you would regret later. Learning to set those type of boundaries even on your own responses are important. If this burden is too heavy for you, then you need to be honest enough to say so, to admit it, and walk away for a time until you're strong enough to come back and help again. You may need to consider if it's actually emotional baggage that you need to carry. And if it isn't, then you need to take it to the charity shop. You know what I mean by that? I mean, take it to God in love. Leave it with Him. Let Him deal with it. He can do a better job, and you can then just pray. You could pray for that person and that emotional need. Another type of exhaustion is physical. It's just when we get too much work, too many relationships, too many responsibilities, too much pressure to perform. Physical exhaustion can come from lots of different places. So take time to look at your circles. Which ones are requiring physical output? You care for your home, your children, your family, your job, and there's a lot of pressure then to attend every event that's going on and fulfilling all these outside roles of church and Slimming World and Scouts and whatever's going on in your life. You may have too many relationships and friendships to manage that you cannot do it adequately. You don't have the strength to do that. Or maybe you've just agreed to do too much and you've spread yourself too thin and now you're about to break. You need to draw some boundaries. We are all given 24 hours in a day. Approximately 8 of those, for most people, are designated for sleeping time. So subtract that plus an hour and a half for eating, basically, and you have 14 and a half hours left. So go to the average 9 to 5 job, and you've used up 8 more hours. And now you have 6.5 remaining. So take off a minimum of 2 hours for getting ready for and going back and forth from work. For some people, it might even be more from that, but 2 hours basically, and now you're down to 4.5 hours in the day. Those few hours remaining are when you're going to do your housework, your family time, your lawn care, whatever entertainment you're going to have, your homework, your study, your exercise, or whatever else is a part of your daily routine. And it's no wonder when you look at it that way that you're exhausted. And this routine continues day in and day out, and you grind down. So if you're physically exhausted, you need to look again at the demands placed on your physical strength by considering where your physical expenditure is going. Maybe you need to make some adjustments. Maybe you need to go to bed an hour earlier or grab a power nap instead of a lunch. Maybe you need to thin down some of the outside expectations and get a better grip on your time management. When you're emotionally and physically wrung out, conflicts will occur and your body will eventually demand attention. Christine Hoover also mentions problem exhaustion, carrying too much information or criticism without hearing good news with balance and work exhaustion, attending every event, entering every conversation with the expectation of success. And we could all find ourselves taking on too much and not establishing healthy boundaries that actually increase our potential for success and happiness. We carry emotional, physical, and sometimes even problem exhaustion. We just get tired. So let me challenge you today to begin by making your own Venn chart. Draw a circle, put your name in the middle of that, and then draw a bunch of overlapping circles and then mark them accordingly. Your spouse, your children, your job, the things that are going in your life. It'll be your own personal chart for sure. Be as complete as you can to draw in all the things that pull and weight down your life. And now take time then to prioritize them. Which ones are vital? They never change. They're necessary. Take time to shuffle then all the others around, and you'll find some of them are not necessary. These need to be placed aside. They need a boundary. And sometimes you'll even find that you need a boundary with family. How much time will you spend? How much money can you afford? How much emotional and physical effort can you actually make in the demands of your family? You have to be realistic about what you can do. It's a tough process. And that's why I recommend Dr. Lynch's book. As we move forward, we're going to be learning how to develop healthy boundaries, or we are going to fall. We've got to learn this skill. We've got to learn what it means to have realistic expectations, sound financial practices, and how to develop better relationships. It's going to be vital. Don't be afraid to say no, or later, or not now, because healthy boundaries benefit you and the person in the situation. So draw that line so you don't feel so exhausted. Christ gives you a similar invitation in Matthew chapter 11 when he says, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." I'll see you next week.